Hello and welcome to I'm Not Your Tour Guide, but I am your host, Starla Skelton. Thank you for joining us on week 2 of Jason and I. Last week, he did this awesome recap of his adventures and travels into the Narrows in Zion National Park. So go ahead and take a listen to that if that's up your alley. Also, take a listen to part 2 today. Today, we're getting a little bit more into just our perspectives and our versions of how we see travel. So a couple of the topics we're hitting up today is the only way to learn about different cultures is to travel. Is that true or false? We both have our opinions. Another one is it safe for women to travel alone? Obviously, I have a little bit stronger opinion on that. Third topic is over tourism. Is it going to hurt a culture or are we helping it? The fourth subject is should you travel to other countries that don't support basic human rights? We go, it's a little bit of a deeper topic, so we very briefly skim that. And then we lighten it up a little bit with our traveling minimalistically. Is that a better experience? And has technology ruined travel? So we hit up those topics. If any of those sounds like something that you want to be a part of, give us a listen and hope you enjoy.
Another thing I like about doing these podcasts is learning something from the other person. And you and I, we have this in common, is that we are constantly on this search for knowledge, right? And that's one of the appeals of travel for us. Like there's always something new around every turn. There's always a new story to be had. But one point I want to make is that sometimes we do need a little bit more than a life-altering physical adventure. As much as fun as it is to talk about, sometimes people like you and I, we need a good debate. So we like to analyze what's going on around us. We like to think critically and express some of our thoughts and our feelings about stuff. And so I had read this quote recently. I'm going to read it. It says, Heffernan said this, "For good ideas and true innovation, you need human interaction, conflict, argument, debate." So I feel like you and I, we have this history of healthy debates. It's part of our thing. It's part of our friendship. And so I was like, let's use this platform. What a great excuse to debate a few ideas that revolve around travel. And usually at the latter end of the podcast, I do like a would you rather with people. But I'm thinking with you, we should do more of like, okay, here's the topic. What is your viewpoint on it? What do you think about it? And if we don't have time to go through the ones that I have, we'll see how long-winded we are.
Did you think that this was going to be like a quick, you're going to have to edit so much of this to get it down? Or you know what you could do? You could do like a part 1 and a part 2.
Yeah, that might even be a good idea. So
what's your record for longest podcast?
I think it was like an hour and 16 minutes.
Oh, I think we've already eclipsed that already.
We talked about one thing, Jason.
We talked about one thing. And really, we didn't even talk about everything. We just kind of like glossed over some high points.
I know. I don't know what it is, but whenever we start talking, it just and it goes on forever. Okay, so let me transition into the topics and we'll see how far we can get. Again, the whole point of this is that if we agree, that's fine, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But if we don't, it's all, I love disagreeing, and sometimes I learn from it, and sometimes I change my opinion on it, and then sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm just like, wow, like Jason is dumber than I thought. I mean, it just depends on.
I am. We could even have a discussion about debate and fun, lighthearted arguing. Sometimes argument can be a negative word, but I think between you and I, argument is like a good, fun thing, right? And even like, debating fun, lighthearted topics is definitely like we learn from each other. We have fun banter because anytime, and maybe not just between you and me, because obviously we do, but just in general, right? Like you get somebody else's opinion, worldview, and you don't get that without
Mhm.
poking it, right? Like kind of picking at it a little bit. Well, why do you do this? Or why do you think about it like that? And to
Yeah.
keep it within that bubble though, I think is important because, and we obviously don't want to go down any other paths, but there are other things I think in our world that just aren't debatable, right? Like these, just some of the things that they're not debatable. Like you can't, there is no other side of the story, right? So like, I think there was a great quote by Margaret Hefferman that you read. And I think contextually, even with our friendship it's always been about positive debate and debating each other's ideas for us both to grow. No one's debating something that's indefensible. So yeah, I think,
yes.
I think as long as people are aware that like when we describe argument and debate and topics, like contextually, it's something positive. We're not debating things that are non-debatable, right? Like, if you're a Nazi, there's no debate. Like, I don't want to know what your side of the story, right? I mean, and I'm just using that as an example, but like, there are just certain things that like, I don't even care what your side is, right? But like, there are places for why do you think this way? And it's a fun, open-minded learning. Or like you said, wow, you're really wrong, but you can be wrong and it doesn't hurt anybody and it's all good and it's fine.
Exactly. And you and I, we both have the same overall positive view on life. So it is fun to just have these, little debates because these topics that I brought up, none of them are going to change anybody's lives, whether I'm wrong or you're right or,
I think we do a good job of checking emotion at the door, right? Like, we don't bring emotion into what our topics of discussion are. We bring our brains, or at least we try to. And then you go, oh, Jason's dumber than I thought. And then you realize I didn't actually bring any brains to this fight. I just kind of like I do. I wing it.
But you've put a lot of things in perspective for me over the years. So it's just fun. I like when people prove me wrong, but of course I like more when I'm right.
You listen, your background, what I love is getting to know people, how they are, where they are, right? They say that a human being is 50% nature, 50% nurture, right? So half of who they are, they were going to be that way anyway, no matter what. But the other half, they are who they are based on their experiences and where they've been and what they've done. And honestly, like that's the side of people that I try to pull out of how for that half of you, what molded you? Like, how did you get here? What makes you think this way? What experiences did you have? And yours is a very unique experience and unlike anyone that I've ever met before. So, I mean, our friendship, it was a pretty skyrocket to the top from the early on where I was like, wow, she might be one of the most interesting people I've ever come across. I have to get to know more, right?
Right. I should have my own Dos Equis commercial.
You should. Yeah.
Okay. Are you ready for topic number 1?
Oh, we haven't even got to topic number 1 yet? Oh my, I thought...
We haven't got to number 1. We've been debating.
We've been debating to see, this is what we do. We debate.
I'm going to have to take charge here. It is my podcast, so I'm the one who's going to take charge.
There you go.
Topic number 1. Here we go. So I've heard a lot of people express their views on this and, even in hostels, travelers talk about this. And so it's just fun. So here is the comment. The only way to learn about different cultures is to travel. That's a statement that I've heard quite a few people claim. The only way to learn about different cultures is to travel. Are you saying you agree, you disagree, you're in?
I would say, well, I mean, it's obviously false. It's obviously false, right? So do you agree that it's false?
So I agree that it's false, but I have a longer version of an answer. I want to let you go first because mine has a bit of a spin where I agree with the overall concept of it. So go ahead and tell me yours.
So that's interesting. I disagree because of the overall concept of it. So I'm opposite there, I think, with you there. I think that it is a better learning experience to learn about another culture by being immersed within that culture, right? But it's not the only way to learn about that culture. And I think is any evidence, like, how do we know about cultures that happened, 1,000 years ago? We didn't travel then, but we know about their culture, right? But do we really know? We probably know 75 to 80% of how their culture was, but because we could never maybe obviously time travel until a flux capacitor makes its way to the real life, we can't maybe really truly know, but we still know what their cultures were like where we can't travel to.
Right.
So I think just as a general saying of, well, you can't really learn about a culture unless you travel, that's not necessarily true. You can learn about all different types of cultures without stepping foot in there. But I would definitely recommend that you do if you know what I mean? I think you get a little bit better version of knowledge when you travel. So for just my own experience, growing up in Central and Austin, Texas, I had a very small view of what Japanese culture was like. And then I lived there for 4 years. And then I left Japan and came back here. And I was like, now I understand what Japanese culture was like. But to be fair, I didn't heavily study Japanese culture before I went, right? So like I wasn't a scholar on their culture. So I think that in that sense, if you put enough time in learning about it, you could understand their culture without traveling. But for dummies like me, that's just trying to get through every day, I'm not really going to understand a culture until I get myself right in the middle of it and I get to hear their language. I get to eat their food. I get to see how they communicate and how their body language is and what their geography looks like. Yeah. Like that's when you kind of really know. But so for people like me, I think the answer is yes. I think it's true. But generally, no, I don't think that you have to travel to learn about cultures. But I think that those are smaller population of people that really get to study that much on something.
Yeah. And I don't, I think whenever I read it and it says the only way to learn, I think my brain, when I see the word learn, I'm thinking more than just what it means because my version, it's basically like Goodwill Hunting. Okay. They stole that from my brain, or I stole it from Goodwill Hunting. I have my moment. Just to give you an example, right? I studied in high school. I remember my favorite social studies teacher. He was all about the Mayans and the Incas and just the oppression of the Latin and South Americans. And he was just very passionate about it. And so I remember his passion. And I remember him talking about this, the history of this lake Titicaca. So it kind of always stood out to me. And so Titicaca, it's a freshwater lake, and it sits on the border of Bolivia and Peru. Okay. Yeah. And so I was like, I want to go to this lake. It's, it's something that I would love to go to. He just made it sound like just such this thing. So even though I was learning the facts about it, even though I was learning about it and where it was and all that kind of stuff, it was so different when I actually stepped foot into this area where what the words that I heard, what I'm seeing now, it like transformed in my head to like this picture. And so I just remember that there are these floating islands and they're called Uros, Uros, and they're man-made. And historically they were basically made because a certain Indian that I think came from the Amazon, they were basically oppressed by the crappy people that were around Lake Titicaca. So they built these floating islands to get away from people. And so, so the history of it is pretty fascinating. And so then I remember when I stepped on this floating island for the first time, like I heard the crunch of the straw, right? Like as soon as I touch and it's like crunching and I smell the fire burning because one of the families on the island, they're cooking breakfast or lunch or whatever. I could feel the sun on my skin, when I'm looking out at the Andes. And like none of these feelings can be replicated, when you're in a classroom and you're listening to this, or you're in a library and you're reading, or even if you're watching a documentary on YouTube or wherever, or even a professor's lecture, like those are just moments that are ingrained in me because I actually went to a place to experience it. I just feel different about it. That doesn't mean I know more about it. I might have actually learned more from my history teacher about the actual, not just the history, but the how it came to be and how these islands were made. I may have actually learned more in class, but once you're there and you smell it and you see it and you feel it, you learn in a different way. It's like a way that stays with you. Like you can't unlearn that, you know?
Right. Well, yeah. Anytime you introduce human senses into the game, it's obviously, you know, it's going to change how that feels, right? So, like, I'm sure I can learn what prison is like, which is a whole nother culture in and of itself. But until you're sitting in a cell, I'm sure, like, then and you're feeling it, you're smelling it, you're in it, like, then you're like, yeah, I have no idea what prison was like. Like, and maybe, again, you can't supplement learning from senses, seeing, smelling, touching, right? Like, so those are two separate things that I think you outlined pretty well. So learning is, I think, the key word in that sentence, or the question that you asked. No, we can learn other cultures without travel, but do you want to, but you can't really come away with an understanding without injecting your senses into the situation.
Again, I know that I am lucky in a lot of ways, that I've been able to do some of the stuff that I've done. And I know it's not a possibility for everybody, even physically, or financially or however.
For sure.
So I'm not saying you can't learn about other cultures.
Exactly.
But I'm just saying, for me, there is something that really hits when I'm actually there. I learned something that I could never learn in a book. And I love books. Books are great. Read. Okay. So we agree on that one. We agree.
I think so.
There's a little bit more depth to it, but I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look at us
Listen,
on something.
We're not a travel purist. I think travel purist would probably be in that mold of you can't learn unless you go there, right? Which is fine, but I just think we disagree a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Okay, here we go. Topic number 2. I'm curious to see what you're going to say about this one. Over tourism isn't going to hurt a country, a city, or a culture. They are lucky to have us there. How do you feel about that bold statement?
I think it was great up until the point that the word lucky to have us there became evolved. So, because trust me, no one's lucky to have me anywhere. But I will say that obviously, so like with anything in life, it's complicated. And I think the problem with life is that there's not a lot of simple answers anywhere. Everything is just a little bit complicated. And I think this is a perfect example of, I think your term was over tourism and what it does to certain communities there. It's complicated. So I think it's a bad thing because obviously it's terrible for the environment. It's terrible on the resources that we strain in those local areas. We take things away from them that they could enjoy themselves, right? Water resources, food resources, air pollution.
Not to mention the prices of their homes can go up.
Well, the prices of everything goes up.
Yeah. I was reading an article about Airbnb the other day, and landlords are able to make more off short-term leases from like 3 people coming in a month and staying in their Airbnb than they can from families that pay to live there full time. So it's like they're either kicking the families out to rent to the tourists that come through, or they're jacking up the prices to the families because they're like, hey, I can make more money.
Right.
Like, it does take some of their home.
No, 100%. There's definitely a plus minus to equation to the answer, right? So it is negative in those ways, but it also is positive because it does a lot of, there are the tourist culture that are locals there, they do rely on that cash flow from outside in, right? Whether that's importing or whether that's exporting their goods for them to sell, or whatever the case may be. And every place is a little bit different, so it's I don't want to give too many examples there, but they rely on that outside cash that wouldn't necessarily be there without tourism. So tourism can lift up a community because of that economic stimulus, but it's not all good. There are definitely negatives that come with tourism in local communities. And when it gets to be too much, you see local communities pushing back and trying to limit, or even stop tourists from coming into their communities, right? Where maybe they feel like they don't need that economic stimulus, and really they're just experiencing the negative side effects to tourism. They're not really getting a whole lot of positive effects.
And I don't want to sound hypocritical, because we're obviously people that 100%. Go and are tourists in these countries as well. Yep. But I think there's got to be some sort of like this is a huge world, is smaller with the ability to travel in an airplane and stuff like that. But at the same time, there's still a lot of space. There's a lot of places to travel. And it's like we just keep picking these one spots. Like we really could spread out a bit. Like I looked this up earlier because I was very interested in it, because I've been to Venice, beautiful spot. But I've also been to cities that are just as beautiful or more beautiful. But again, nothing against Venice, great spot. But I was looking up some stats on Venice earlier, and as Google, this is what Google told me today, that their metro area is about 600,000 that live in and around permanent city resident. In 2019, there were 4.8 million visitors in Venice. So it's like, it really, like you said earlier, a lot of them are coming in cruise ships. That's a lot of pollution. What are they leaving? Trash, right? I mean, because we're humans,
Oh, for sure.
We produce waste.
Yes.
And so it's just stuff like that. I'm like, how do we as humans, as people, like spread it out enough to where it's like not just one city or 10 cities that are just getting hit? What is it going to take to kind of just spread us out a little, so everybody is getting a little bit of something, and other cultures and countries and cities can benefit from tourism as well?
So that's a good point. I think the problem with some of your answer or your solution is that there are just some places that are situated in the perfect weather, and really weather plays a big part of tourism as well. Like people want to go where the weather feels nice. I'm talking about high volumes of people. Obviously, people will travel to really, really cold places, and people will travel to really, really hot places. But when you look at the median, the majority of folks, they want to go to a place where the weather's nice, comfortable. They can spend a lot of time outdoors without being too cold, without being too hot. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of places like you described that have that kind of perfect weather pattern where it's not too cold, it's not too hot, it's just kind of right to go as much as you want to go. So I think weather plays a factor in unfortunate cities that, or even, take Hawaii, for example. Hawaii just kind of sits in a perfect place where it's perfect all the time. Now, Hawaii is a little inaccessible to most folks because you have to fly in, right? But they definitely get more people than they can probably handle on that island. Like, I'm sure that the locals there are probably fed up with how many people are coming in over and over and over and over, right? So, but again, they live in a spot where the weather's, it's not like, oh, hey, why don't we go to the other Hawaii? Well, there's not one. Like, not, you know what I mean? Like, there are other islands, but like Hawaii, like there's not Hawaii 2. Oh, well, Hawaii's booked. Let's go to Hawaii, the sequel. Unfortunately, weather could benefit some cities and it could hurt some cities just by being where they're located.
For sure. Okay. So as far as over tourism isn't going to hurt our culture, our country, our city, there are repercussions, but overall, we're saying...
I think overall, I would say it's a good thing. If I didn't have that position, then I would feel really shitty traveling to places when I'm like, oh, well, I really believe that me coming here is really bad for you. I don't believe that. So if I did, that would be weird.
Right.
So I think overall, obviously, it's not a bad thing, but there are bad consequences to over tourism 100%.
Yeah. So we agree with the first part, but then they are lucky to have us there. I don't agree with that at all, but that's just a crappy thing to say. And so my third comment to you, one of the reasons that I used to do a lot of solo traveling was because I would be so exhausted from just that day in and day out of conversing with people and keeping that energy level high. These solo trips, these solo travel trips, it was a chance for me to take it down a notch, really just observe other people, not have to be the one entertaining, and learn from what I'm watching around me without having to be the center of attention. But this one's actually a question. Is it safe, in your opinion, for women to travel alone? What is your perspective on that?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I have the best perspective on that question, but I think if I have to give an opinion on that question, I would think that a woman is just as safe traveling as a man would be alone, because anytime you travel alone, obviously when you travel, we talked about luck, because luck always plays a factor into it, whether it's good luck or bad luck. And then, you obviously have to think about risk management and putting yourself at risk or limiting risk. You can be as safe as you want to be, right? And especially if you're traveling outside of the country, if you live in the United States and you're a female living in the United States and you travel to another country, I would think chances are you're probably safer in another country alone than you would be in the United States, right? I mean, we're not the safest place here. I mean, we have other countries that are issuing travel bans against us. So I know that women have a different obstacle or things. They obviously have to deal with certain factors that men don't think about or that we have to deal with. So that's why I say I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer that question, because I haven't experienced things that obviously women have to experience. So, but just kind of from the outside looking in, I would think that women are just as safe traveling as men would be, with obviously a couple of different things that maybe women have to think about differently than men do. But still, when you're talking about safety, if you're going to get injured or if anything's going to happen to you while you travel, do you know what the number one, you might know this, do you know what the number one reason for injury or death that's like a medical is for travelers? Do you know the answer?
I was thinking, my mind went directly to mosquitoes, but that's the number one that animal people die from worldwide. Right. So no, I don't know. What is it?
It's transportation. So mainly auto accidents. So that's the number one leading cause of non-medical injury or death is transportation. And so if you're traveling alone, the greater chance that you have of getting injured or something bad happening to you is going to happen while you're in your transportation somewhere. Typically in a car. Car accidents are number one, right? So and doesn't matter if you're a male or a female when that occurs. So, I think that women obviously have to think and deal with more than men do when traveling solo, obviously. But I think that it's, in my opinion, which doesn't mean much of anything in this question, I would think that it's just as safe to travel alone and probably safer to travel to another country than it would be to travel within the United States.
Let me give you my perspective of it. The reason I even asked that is because I think some people just not even meaning to. I'm going to put my dad on blast here. My brother could have gone on the same trip alone, and I could have gone on the same as me, and he would be worried about me. And, I've called him out before. He's like, "You're just my daughter. I just worry more about you." And I'm like, that's just how he thinks in his mind. I can't say why. I'm not defending him or anything. I'm just saying that's how he thinks. But I can tell you this, as a woman who has traveled alone a lot, I'm very hyper aware of my surroundings when I travel. So I already think, hey, I've got an advantage because I am paying attention. I'm paying attention to things that go around me. I am not just on my phone, not paying attention to where my bag's at or where my stuff's at. I'm hyper aware. I don't go out late at night. If it was with a group of people or walking back or taking an Uber, that's a different situation. But I'm not just like walking the streets at night.
Mm-hmm.
I think about the choices that I'm making, and I feel like I just I'm more decisive, and I really think out the choices, and I'm not just kind of. I know that's part of the fun of travel is just the adventure that comes with it. But I don't know, when I'm traveling alone, I'm like, okay, what would the consequences be here? Is this going to be, is this safe? Is this a good decision for me to make? Mm-hmm. So I feel like I really think about stuff more than if I have somebody with me, because then it's just like, oh, whatever, let's do whatever. So for me personally, as a woman traveling alone, I feel safe. I feel like I'm making those right choices, and I got no beef with it.
And I think that's the right answer. And you kind of harped on risk management. Like you manage your risk. Like you look at certain things. Is this going to be optimal for me to do in this situation, in this country, right? Like I guarantee you there are things that you can do or have done in other countries that you would never do in America, because it would be way too dangerous in America to do, but would be very safe in another country to do. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of obviously people that listen to your podcast, they're gonna understand a better understanding of what that means to them, whether it's true or not. They'll have an understanding of what that means to them because they travel. But for people that maybe have never been outside the country, like I don't think that they really understand like how dangerous we are. We're 5% of the population. We lock up over 25%. Not because of, I mean, obviously there's some issues there, but a lot of it is because we have a lot of dangerous people here. I mean, again, that's a whole nother conversation, but this is a very dangerous country to live in. And there's other countries that you go to and you're like, wow, I feel so much safer here than I ever did back home. Or I've done things in other countries that I would have never done, back here in Atlanta or in Austin or anywhere. In America, that's maybe in a city. I've always lived in cities, so maybe my background's a little bit different. But so I'm happy to hear you say that you feel safe because you manage your risk properly. Obviously, luck plays a little bit of involvement in there, but you feel safe whenever you travel, and that makes me feel good, because it would be really unfortunate if you or maybe even other females out there that feel differently or they feel unsafe to travel alone. Like that would be really sad. I mean, it would be like, wow, like what can society or different societies do to improve that? But I think safety really needs to be talked about more in this country and traveling. You're kind of traveling away from risk. I feel like, obviously, depending on where you travel, if you travel to Syria or Afghanistan or even parts of Africa.
Yeah. You legit just transferred. You just segued yourself right into my next comment.
I did it again.
And this one is a little heavy. Yeah, you did it again. This one's a little heavy, and then the last few are a little lighter. But I am curious about what you have to say on this one. So, number 4, should you travel to countries that don't support women's rights, gay rights, basic human rights, where equality is frowned upon? And let me give you an example, because I did some Googling earlier today about countries that have the poorest, that are known for not having supporting the basic human rights. And so Iraq, Iran, North Korea, they were up there. Afghanistan was up there. Tanzania at one point, if you were somebody if you supported LGBT, anything, I mean, they were given up to 30 years in prison at one point. So, I mean, this is extreme. This isn't like you get a slap on the wrist and, we hate you. This is like legit punishing them. And so, I don't know how they're measuring racism when it comes to what I Googled today, but they also said like Egypt, Philippines, names I wouldn't really think about when you think about racism.
Yeah. So basic human rights, women's rights. I don't know all the countries, obviously, but I would think the ones that you rattled off, pretty much most of the Middle East, and I would think most of Africa, have some pretty bad, in my opinion, pretty bad human rights or women's rights issues. So would I travel there because of that? That's a very interesting question. I would think that a lot of those places that have the bad human rights probably need the most help. And I don't know if like a solo traveler to some of those dangerous, because there are some dangerous countries within there. There are some countries that are not dangerous to travel in within Africa, but there are some that would be. So I think that I wouldn't travel to a place like that. I don't know if it would be solely based on human rights, because I feel like the more that we show them love and compassion and show them the importance of human rights, I think that that's the only way to combat that, right? Like ignoring it and just saying, be done with it. Like, I don't know if that will help or change anything. But, again, this isn't something that you can do as a solo traveler, though, right? Like what I'm talking about is like humanitarian aid on a large global scale, right? Coming in and really helping out communities and building homes and helping feed people, like, and showing them the reason behind why human rights are important. So as a solo traveler, there are definitely some of those countries that I wouldn't travel to because it probably would be dangerous for me or for anyone. You know what I mean? That's not a local there. And it might even be dangerous for the locals there too. So I don't know if I would say don't travel to a place based solely on that, but I don't know if I would solo travel, but it would be more than just that. What are your thoughts?
I'm so conflicted on this one. I really am, because like, for example, China. I've been to China. I had a great trip. I loved a lot of things about it. The Chinese people were incredible to me.
Me too.
But I know that the Chinese people and the Chinese government kind of two different things, right? So I didn't even think about it really. It didn't really cross my mind before I went. But then when I got, once I heard some stories from some of the local people there, I started thinking, I'm like, is it ethical to travel? I don't know. I'm so up in the air about it because, like you said, you want to show people compassion, show people love. Like, I almost think, like, what would Nelson Mandela do? What would his action be towards it? Because he was such that centerpiece of love and forgiveness and showing compassion. But then again, I'm just one really no-name person. What would that? I'm not changing anything on a global scale, like you said.
For good or for bad. So that's what I'm saying. Like, not traveling there isn't going to do any good or bad. Traveling there isn't going to do any good or bad. So, like, let's take North Korea, for example. Like, I would never travel to North Korea, right? But if North Korea was located next to Hawaii and they were welcoming tourists, and, would I go there and try to, with the mindset of, hey, I want to try to, like, not impose my values, but maybe show them something that maybe we're not to be so afraid of, or show them a different viewpoint behind why we think human rights without, like, shoving it down their throat. But North Korea is maybe a bad example because they won't let you inside. But if they did, and if it wasn't the frozen tundra, because let me tell you, you've been to South Korea, right? Have you been to South Korea?
Yeah, I've been to South Korea.
It's cold. At least in the wintertime, it's cold. Like, the coldest I've ever been in my life was in South Korea in the wintertime. Like, it was insane. I was like,
that bulgogi, though, is worth it. Go get some chicken bulgogi and some kimchi.
Yeah, that's a whole nother level. I love South Korea, by the way. Love South Korea. But it's freezing. It was freezing when I went one of the times. The other time it wasn't, but one of the times I went, it was absolutely freezing. So, but I know that, North Korea shut themselves off. I guarantee we as a society would welcome, South Korea, look at the difference between South Korea and North Korea. South Korea didn't shut themselves off. And I'm not a historian on the Korean culture, so I'm definitely not the one to talk about this. But, North Korea has a chance to not be this way, right? And I think that if they decided that they didn't, I think we as Americans and other countries would welcome them with open arms and want to travel there to help show them, hey, this is how things can improve, right? So, like, I'm probably using bad examples in this, but I just think that shutting a country out on a global scale, I don't know if that will do any good. But there are definitely some countries on that human rights list that I would never travel to, but it's not just because they have poor human rights. it would probably because it would put my life in danger, or it would just not be a very awesome place to go to.
Yeah, I think that's a heavier subject that we could talk about and debate for hours. I kind of just feel a certain way. Like, I agree with you on a lot of stuff you said, but then again, I'm like, am I really making a change? No, I don't know. But I liked your perspective. It was good. All right, I'm going to transition to the next one. Traveling minimalistically is a far better experience. True or false?
So, okay, I think it depends on how you're traveling. I think if you're flying somewhere, I think traveling minimalistic is like the way to go. But if you're driving, I feel like packing your vehicle as much like I love bringing. It's crazy. Like when I'm doing road trips, I will overpack. I will bring everything with room to bring stuff back with me, right? So
you're like, I might go on a picnic. I might need this blanket.
Listen, I bring everything. Now, I'm a minimalist at heart in general, like not just with travel, but just with my life. Like if there was a show about hoard, like if there was like an opposite of a hoarder, that would be me. And they would be like, where's all your stuff? And I'm like, I don't really have a lot of stuff. Like I don't, you know what I mean? Like I don't keep a lot of stuff. Like I find myself having stuff, but then I don't hold on to it for very long. So I guess I'm the opposite of a hoarder. So I kind of live my life in a minimalist way in general. But whenever I go on a road trip, that's like the one time where I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to bring everything that I have and we'll just go. And I know that way I don't have to think about it. I got it. But when it comes to traveling abroad, or if you're even traveling domestically and you're flying, I think that traveling with the least amount is probably the best way to go. You kind of want to be freed up to experience and do and not lug around all your stuff. That's my thoughts anyway.
Yeah. No, and you know what's so funny is that like I want to be a minimalist even when I car travel. Like I want to, but then again, I'm like, I have the ability to like bring this Frisbee. I'm like, hey, I might want to play Frisbee at some point on this trip. So you're right. I just start putting in things that I would never pack if I was traveling on an airplane or if I was traveling even, via train. If I'm just putting everything on my back and going. Yeah. When I car travel, I definitely overpack, but not on purpose. I swear to God, I try to be a minimalist even whenever I'm car packing. And then it just ends up being like, oh, these hand warmers, they might come in handy if we get into some cold weather. And I'll just pack random stuff. But anytime I'm flying, going backpacking, on a train, on a boat, anything like that, I'm packing as little as possible. I don't want to worry about it. I don't want the weight. I don't even like to think about these things, and they're just things. I like the feeling. I'm kind of addicted to the feeling of being somewhere, knowing that all I need is on my back. Mm-hmm. And that's a really cool feeling to know that you really don't need anything else. You're just in the moment experiencing it. And there's something kind of beautiful about that.
Yeah. So obviously traveling depends on where you're going kind of matters, right? Like the setting matters. So there's a lot of variables there, but there's something about, say, I don't know, like flying to Iceland and you have 5 pairs of pants, 5 pairs of shoes, 7 shirts, like you're taking all this stuff and it's like, just take a couple things. Yeah. Like you probably need 2 shoes. Maybe you need 2 pants. Like, just go enjoy that volcano, right? Like go enjoy what Iceland is. You don't worry about all your stuff. Yeah. And if you need something, you can probably pick something up.
Yes, exactly. I think it's hysterical when people are, oh, I got to bring Band-Aids and I got to bring snacks. I get it if you want snacks on the plane ride, but like you can get snacks in another country.
That's
right. You can pick up some Band-Aids. You can pick up some contact solution. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe not in every country, but in a lot of places, you can get all the necessities that you need. So I do think it's funny when people like overpack with all this stuff they think the other country's not going to have.
Well, and I think it just comes with, having a little bit more experience in dealing with all your stuff matters. Like when a couple of times of lugging around all your stuff, you're going to go, you know what? Next time I'm probably going to bring half of this. Like I didn't use this. I didn't need that. So I think a lot of that kind of comes with doing it repetition and doing it over again. You kind of learn, okay, I'm going here. This is what I need for sure. Like any medications you need or, whatever, like bathroom stuff, whatever, like you need this stuff. But then the other stuff, do I need it? Like, then you start having do I need it or do I want it conversation? You put a couple things in that you want that you don't need, but you leave everything else. You take what you need, you bring a couple once, and then you go. And then when you take the Jeep, you take everything you need and everything you don't need, and you don't have to worry about it. You just bring everything.
Oh my goodness, that's hysterical. Okay, so we have 2 more questions or two more comments.
Love that.
And I'm very curious. This is the one I'm most curious about what you're going to say.
Oh, boy.
And this one's lighter-hearted. Doesn't matter what either one of us say, but we're both going to have an opinion on it. So, technology has ruined travel. Agree or disagree?
Disagree. Hard disagree.
Because I agree. Go ahead. I agree. Man, I'm just like, I'm anti. So go ahead, tell me why you disagree.
So you said technology. Maybe we should define technology. What is technology to you?
Okay, so look, I understand the benefit. I benefit from the luxury of technology as we sit here, right? I'm enjoying this amazing conversation in 2 different places. We're getting
so when you booked your flight, how did you book your flight?
This year? Via technology. 20 years ago, I made a call.
Well, you had
a call, and we printed out some stuff on paper.
Right, but you don't anymore.
No.
Right.
No, I don't.
Exactly.
No. I benefit from technology.
Of course.
When it comes to travel. But I do think you need to bring awareness to people aren't even paying attention to where they're going because all they're doing, you will see people just walking around with their phone on, social media and everything. They're the star of their show. I get that everybody's the star of their own show in life, right?
Yeah.
But they're taking it. And it's like almost an act. It's like they're not the authentic enjoyment of it once you get there. So maybe you're right as far as technology does help us. It's more convenient in the travel world.
But hold on. But you're blaming poor human behavior on technology. What you're describing is poor human behavior. It has nothing to do with technology.
But okay. It is poor human behavior. But if we have all this technology that advances every single year, should we have classes? Should we have some sort of somebody's got to learn how to not abuse this because everything humanistic about us is getting taken away? No,
because you're never going to teach that. You're not going to teach poor human behavior out of people. I just assume 6 to 7 out of 10 people they're just going to have poor etiquette, poor human behavior, in my opinion, right? Like what I would consider good behavior or proper, etiquette or whatever. But I think going back to the question, technology has only helped travel because it's helped open the doors to find places that maybe you wouldn't have stumbled upon, right? Now, stumbling upon places is fantastic and it's great. And it's like, oh my God, but not having to do that as much and relying on something where you're like, hey, listen, Anthony Bourdain went to this restaurant in this country and it looked really cool. We're here. It's right there. I just feel like, mapping system, GPS, there's just so much that goes in with technology that has made travel easier and opened a wider option to travel because of technology. So you can use technology for what it's for and use it in a good way. It enhances the travel experience. But what you described...
So it's easier for people. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's easier because now you get to take more time in experiencing and doing and less time having to figure stuff out manually or search for a place. So let's say that you go to a different country and you're trying to find a restaurant.
Fun part.
I'm not saying it's not fun, but I'm saying, like, let's say that you have a restaurant and maybe you spend 2 hours walking around the city looking for it. That could be a great experience. But if you know where it's at, you go directly there, you eat. Well, now you have 2 hours to go do something else that's cool. So I don't know, maybe that's a bad example, but I feel like
I think that is a bad example. But
I feel like technology has opened the doors. At least when I travel, I rely on technology a lot in a lot of different ways.
But you could still do it without technology. You can. We did it 30 years ago. We still explored all. It's not like all these places have just been discovered because of social media or because of technology. They were there beforehand. We just read books. We did more research. You're right. We do spend more time looking for stuff, but at the same time, in the world of the umbrella of exploration, that's kind of sometimes the part where you just learn a lot, even if it's about yourself. And that's just one of the things that I really grasp about travel is the learning and what you get out of it and the mistakes that you make. And I think that there's less error now because of technology. And a lot of people, and we could argue all day that, oh, that's great, there's less error, you have more time to do other stuff. But sometimes that error is like where the story comes from. That's where you met somebody when you were lost and looking for something. You actually met somebody, had a conversation with them at a hostel, found out where this Italian place that you were looking for is going to be. And then they're like, hey, well, since you're going to be there, why don't you go ahead and go stay at this place? Because it's like a lot more human interaction.
Well, yeah. And so I think, I don't want you to conflate what I'm saying. I'm not saying that, I think you're thinking that I'm thinking you have to use technology to travel or you have to use technology to have a better experience. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that technology has enhanced it and it has opened up more doors to knowledge that I probably wouldn't have known about had the technology been there. So I do use it. I don't use it on everything that I do, but I do rely on it. And I will say that, like, when I solo travel, especially when I'm out in like somewhere out in the country or somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, like I do rely on having like a GPS signal with me to where if I get lost or if something bad were to happen, like I have some type of a device on me that tells other people where I'm at, right? Or I have a quick way to getting a hold of someone, or just sometimes technology isn't even being used, but it's in a position where I can use it if I need it. So
it's a convenience.
It's definitely a convenience. It is a convenience, but I think that it's a convenience that everyone uses for a reason. Now, obviously, there's overuse and there's the things that you talked about that grind your gears. And I agree with you. Overutilizing technology can take away some of the experience, right? So it's like the person going to the concert and filming the entire show without actually experiencing the show themselves, right? There's a difference in sitting there with your phone and filming the show and you're worried about what you're getting versus what you're feeling and what you're experiencing at the show. So I think in moderation with everything, I think you can say that, but technology is definitely a good thing overall, in my opinion.
Yeah, it definitely makes things more convenient. Definitely more convenient. But at the same time, I just think I look at it as a whole, and I look at what it's done to our community as a whole. And I am surrounded by people when I travel who don't even know how to have a conversation anymore. And I just remember being in this one place and they legit took the Wi-Fi out of there. And it was like, no Wi-Fi, talk to each other, right? Like, you want to know what there is to do around here? Instead of Googling top things to do in I mean, wherever we're going to talk about, Costa Rica, like, why don't you have a conversation with somebody, talk to somebody? I mean, it does take away some basic skills we should be able to have.
Well, but again, you're one polarized you're one opposite into the other. My thing would be, why not do both? Why not research what's good in the area and then talk to a local? Hey, this place was highly recommended. This place was highly recommended. Are those tourist traps? Should I go somewhere else? So prime example, I was in Miami. I wanted the best Cuban sandwich Miami had to offer. That's what when I go to Miami, that's what I want. I want a Cuban sandwich. I looked up the top rated Cuban sandwich places, you know, and I narrowed it down to the top 3 or whatever. And the second I found a local, and a Cuban, mind you, at that, I just straight up asked him, hey, these are the places that I found for the best Cuban sandwich. I'm looking for a delicious Cuban sandwich. These are the places it gave me. He said, you know what? Those places are all good. You're going to love whatever they give you. But let me tell you this place. Mm-hmm. And I was like, let's go there. And I went there instead. Now, I did the research. I had places in my pocket. But the second I talked to a local, I called an audible and I went to the place that the local referred me to. So my thing in this technology debate would be use both. Obviously, interact with other humans. I mean, I do that everywhere I go as I just talk to people. But I also, in case I talk to awful people or there's nobody for me to find to talk to, I use technology to make sure that I have a backup plan or I know some sort of sense of where I'm going, what I'm doing, what is available. But that doesn't prevent me from starting the conversation. In fact, it gives me something to ask them. Like I almost use that as an opener to a conversation where I'm just a strange person coming up to them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think how you're doing it, the balance that you are choosing to have is probably the right way because you are flexible in life. Like you're accepting the changes and the perks that technology brings, but at the same time, you're trying to stay a little old school, talk to people. Like you've got this good balance. I think so many people don't have that balance and it worries me. And maybe just, and this is all my perspective because we grew up differently. We have different perspectives on what we've done in life. My best travel memories in life were when I didn't have a phone. And I think I just relate my best moments to that feeling of not being able to rely on my phone and just relying on what I have here.
Don't disagree with that.
I think that's why I think that way.
I don't disagree with that. And in fact, you've proven you don't have to have it. But the opposite of not having to have it isn't only using it. You know, I'm interjecting of, hey, there's a third option where you can do both. You can still get the experience of your travel and your environment without using technology, but you can use it if you want to, and it's there for you as a convenience to help enhance the situation if you need it, right? So I think
you're Tom Cruise in Last Samurai, and you are telling me that we're going to take the old ways of the samurai and using the sword, and we're going to mix it with the new because we still want to be respected around the world. Like you're combining the two, the new with the old. That's what you're telling me here.
You know, if this was a visual podcast, you could see me jumping on a couch right now.
I like a good Tom Cruise reference. You know,
yeah,
he
me
just
too.
has so many good movies.
Me
okay,
too.
So on that one, we have different opinions, but I can agree with you on the fact that I think it does make our travel experiences easier.
I think that your opinion is extreme. I think that you're a hardline purist when it comes to that sense, and I'm a moderate, balanced human, like with most things in life.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just have something against more technology. I'm like, we got enough. Like
you're fighting it.
We need more.
You're fighting it.
I guess it's like to cure cancer. I get that. You know, bring on the technology. But as far as adding more technology into my world of travel, leave it at home. I don't want it.
I'm a progressive at heart, which means I'm always wanting to progress and learn and move forward. So I accept.
I know you are.
I accept what I want more of what the future has to offer. Like I'm always searching for what is going to be better out there, and you know what I mean.
Oh,
so
no.
I
embrace
I get what you
technology.
Mean,
but I'm like, take me back to Little House on the Prairie.
Nah. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, last one. Because this is going to have to be a part 2 because I can't post 3 hours of a podcast.
Can't post 3 hours.
So
Yeah, what are we at? We're at 2 hours. We're at 2.5.
But I'm no Joe Rogan. You know what I'm saying? I can't post a 3-hour
Right.
podcast.
Nobody's
anybody to
you
listen,
could probably you could. So we're at 2.5. I'll be curious to see what you edit out.
Okay, last one. And this one, my brother actually said this.
Okay.
And I was going to have him come on tonight and discuss this one with us because he's the one who said it. But he's actually driving tonight to Outer Banks. Him and his wife.
Nice.
And their 2 kids.
Good for them.
They're doing the overnight drive since they got kids. And they're like, they'll sleep at night.
Yeah.
So this is what he said. We were traveling one time, and I'm going to do a podcast on it the next month. We had a pretty sweet hitchhiking trip.
Nice.
And I remember him saying to me mid-trip, he says, travel, staying humble, man, it's harder than it looks. So, he's trying to just say that, all this traveling that we're doing and experiences that we have, and then trying to stay humble at the same time, not thinking that your thoughts are better than other people's thoughts. He's like, it's harder. It's hard for me sometimes. He's like, it's a little harder than I thought it was going to be. And it sounds like a pretentious thing to think, but sometimes I do think that. Sometimes I'm like, I need to stay humble. I need to show some humility because guess what? My travel stories, as soon as people think I'm bragging, they become something nobody wants to listen to. Nobody wants to listen to somebody that's bragging. But if you have a legit story that you're passionate about and you want to share with somebody, there's a difference, right? There's a difference between sharing and just bragging.
Oh, of course. Well, your brother's definitely not a bragger.
Who is not?
No, I said your brother's definitely not a bragger. So even though he's saying it's hard for him, that's not even his style, and it's hard for him. Some people that don't know him
it's a conscious effort.
Right, it's a conscious effort. So it's funny that he said that. That's a funny saying. I get what he's saying. It's hard for me to relate to that just because I don't have near the travel experiences that your brother does. I'm in a solar system of travel. I'm kind of Neptune, Pluto out there. So I've always kind of been humble with because everybody that obviously I tend to surround myself with like-minded people, but what I find is that the people that I end up surrounding myself with have done things that I've done, but on a grander scale, or they've done it 10 times more, which probably is why my gravitational force brings me into them, because I'm like, oh, well, not only do you do things that interest me, but you've also done things that I can learn from, right? So because I've never been on the leading edge of that, where I'm like, listen, I've been to 70 countries, come and talk to me, right? Like, I don't know, because everybody that I've surrounded myself with have always been to more places and done cool stuff too. So I've never felt like that, but I get in the context of what he's saying. He doesn't mean it in a bad way, obviously, but I think that anytime that you do something, for the lack of a better word, cool, like anytime you do something cool, it is a little bit harder to check yourself. Right? But you do, because you get reminded very fast that it's a very privileged situation. There are so many other humans that don't have that opportunity, whether physically, mentally, financially, so you don't want to ever take advantage of the situation that you're in, that other people may not be able to fit in. And I think the older that I've gotten, the more perspective I have on things, because I, experience more. So for me, every time I do something, what I would describe as cool, I'm like 99% satisfied. But then I'm always have that 1% of like, all right, in perspective, like not everybody can do that. And I'm like on a bottom rung of a ladder. Like there's so many people that get to do way more cool stuff than I do. I mean, I'm a nobody, right? Like I don't have millions of dollars. I don't have access to the coolest things, but I make it. But even from my level of the ladder, what I'm privileged to do is still way more than a lot of others are able to do. So while it obviously it won't prevent me from doing something cool. I always keep it in perspective in anything that I do or anywhere that I go, that, hey, listen, I'm here because I'm fortunate. And I'm not even, like I said, I'm not even that fortunate. I'm not like a trust fund baby. I'm not rich. I'm not any of these things, but I'm fortunate in I'm not sleeping under a bridge either. I'm doing good, but when you think about it on a scale, like, where do I fit, right? You think of like people that you see going, spending millions of dollars and doing their type of travel. And I'm like, I'm not even sure that that's the travel that I would even want to do. I want to go out. You know what I mean? Right. Like it almost feels wasted, but that's not for me to say. I mean, listen, they're living their best life. Go do it. I'm not jealous or envious of that. So go do it. Live your best life.
Yeah.
But for me, I just feel like it's not a style of travel that would interest me. You know what I mean? I want to see,
100%.
feel, touch. I don't want to go, I don't know. I mean, we're kind of going down a different road here, but I think in the box of what he's saying, it can be hard to stay humble in any fortunate position that you're in. And that's whether it's travel, whether it's money, whether it's living, whatever it is. If you're in a position to have something, it's hard not to not be humble about having that. Like, it's hard to have a perspective beneath you, or what, and even beneath you sounds weird, but like, that's not on the same level of whatever that is. I think as long as everyone just keeps their perspective, then I think you can still enjoy what you enjoy, but without taking advantage. I don't know. It's a very interesting quote to dissect, which is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to dissect that quote.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts are, whenever he said this was pre-babies, pre-living outside of the country for 10 years. This was him getting right out of college. He was a different person then, right? I feel like whenever, especially when you're in your early 20s, and you have already lived the life he had lived in his early 20s, that's like, Justin Bieber, when he's got millions and millions of dollars, and he's like, I'm so young, I can do anything I want with this. Those are moments where it's hard to stay humble because you haven't had the experiences in life that really put things in perspective for you. But now that he's been married, he has, had multiple jobs. He's got 2 daughters that he's raising. Now I'm sure it's a lot easier for him to stay humble, right? He looks at life differently. He looks at travel differently. He'll make jokes a lot of time, about traveling with the girls, that it's a completely different experience. It's not, adventure like he's used to, but at the same time, he's seeing the world through their eyes. So, he's just in a different world now. So I think there was a time that him and I both truly thought that. We were like, man, we are awesome. We have done some, but there's just a time in our life where we just thought we were it. And that quote meant something to us. But yeah, at this point in my life, I'm like, oh, it is not hard to stay humble. I am in my 40s. I have to pull out chin hairs. I'm like, don't eat anything. And I gained 5 pounds. I'm just like, oh my God, I'm humbled just sitting here. Okay. I'm humbled by age itself. Getting old is not for the weak, because everything that, like, I don't even recognize myself some days in the mirror. So I'm just like, I am not that cool of a person. So now I can look at this and say, it's not hard, but there was a time as a young traveler where it was hard.
It's funny that I just heard that quote. Somebody said, getting old is not for the weak. I just heard that like a month ago. And so it's funny that you said that. Yeah, it's funny that you said that. I made it up. Dang it. I mean, listen, obviously you're not stealing a quote from anybody. So it's cool that you thought of it. But I think that maybe humble has everything to do with age, and not even, maybe that's just something that comes with an evolving experience of your brain when you finally kind of peak your, what we call prime, I guess, early 20s, early 30s. And we start climbing on the other side of the mountain. So we're on the way up, we're cocky, and, nothing, we can't see behind us. And then on the way down, everything's in front of us, right? So maybe there's something to that. right? Because like I said, I think we all feel different, obviously, in that sense of where we were in our 20s and even early 30s than where we are maybe mid 30s, early 40s. Maybe me, I'm in my mid 40s now, which is crazy to me. But like, I definitely see everything in front of me as opposed to before where nothing was in front of me, everything was behind me, and I was kind of leading my life. Now things have slowed down. I can kind of I can kind of see the outlook of everything. Yeah. So that's interesting.
That's a good point. I like that though. I didn't think about that whenever I wrote that down. And I just wrote that down because I was looking through an old journal and it was something I had written down that Ryan had said. And I'm like, I'm like, that's an interesting point. And it's funny how when he said it, I was 100%. I was like, yes, best quote ever. And now I'm like, that's where we were at in our life. You know,
what's funny, and you said that you talked to him about that. Did he remember saying that quote?
He totally did.
He remembered. So he remembered telling you that.
Oh yeah, he remembers because it was on our. I'm not giving any spoilers. I'm just giving a little piece, but it's. I want to do a podcast with him on our hitchhiking trip where we started in Atlanta and ended up in Seattle, Washington.
Nice.
And he wrote that and he said that on our trip, and it's in my journal from that trip.
Okay.
And he remembers it because we had a good conversation about it. Right?
Yeah.
And we talked about it for a couple more years afterwards. We're like, oh my God, we just did the coolest thing. How do we not act like it was the coolest thing? You know?
And you know what? That's hard to do. That's what I'm saying. When you do something cool, it's hard not to feel like you did something cool and kind of lose perspective, right? It's hard. And I'm not even saying it's right or it's wrong. I'm just saying it's hard not to.
Yeah. I don't think there is a right or a wrong. I just think it's how people are going to take it. You can tell me about the Narrows. I may think, oh, that's amazing. What a great trip. And somebody else might be like, yeah, he can afford it, but it's not like anywhere something I could go, and like just might have a whole different like hater attitude mentality on it. You know?
For sure. Totally get that. Yeah. And listen, those are things that I think about. How do I come across? Do I, I don't want to not live my life, and I don't want to, I'm going to say what I'm going to say, but I do have it in my mind. Like, I don't want to come across as, oh, well, this little bitty thing here means that I'm better than you, and this little bitty thing, like, no, you know what I mean? Like, it is kind of a weird that, like, I'm aware of people's perspectives and not even knowing where they came from or what they've done. I'm just respecting boundaries, I guess. And that's what's so fun about having close friends like yourself. We can kind of let go of those boundaries and just kind of banter back and forth without having to wonder or think, oh, wow, I wonder if when I said that, I wonder if she got weirded out by that, or it made it feel, or she felt a certain way about that.
Yeah. No, this has been fun. I've had a great 3-hour conversation with you.
I'm getting the wrap it up signal here. Yeah, wrap it up.
It's the next day. We started this yesterday, Jason, and
we did.
We started on a Sunday, and it's now Monday.
Similarly to my 2-day narrow hike that I highlighted here, I just went on a 2-day podcasting adventure that was almost as thrilling. Well, listen, the last 2 days have been a whirlwind. It's been a whirlwind the last 2 days. And no, this was fun. I'm glad that you're doing this. This is definitely something that you're a natural at. This isn't forced. This is something that you can tell that this is kind of what you naturally can do. And I look forward to many more of your episodes, listening to them and who you're getting on and the great guests that are coming on. And you're a good person to banter with. And I look forward to, if I'm on again, that's fantastic. But I fully support your growth in this, and you're really good at it. So I'm really happy for you, and I want to see you again before you make the final move up to Seattle. So we definitely got to hang out again before that happens. Yeah, because I know it's happening probably sooner than later.
Yeah, for sure. I need to come hang out with you, your partner, and your cat. I got to see your cat. You know what I'm saying? And Chrissy, of course.
Yeah.
But we'll make that happen. But yeah, thank you. And thank you for your kind words. This is fun. Like, it really is. It's just fun to me.
Yeah.
that's all I can say. I look forward to creative outlets and just being able to express how I feel about, the fun things that we've all experienced in life. And it's just something for me to look forward to,
So now the next time somebody comes on, they're like, hey, what's the longest podcast you've done? Now you can say 3 hours. Yeah, we have to talk about what gear do you bring before you do a 2-day podcast.
All right, man. Have a good night.
All right, you have a good night as well.
Bye.
Bye. All right, how do you leave?
Thanks,
How do you leave? How do you turn this thing?
We remind you that this is a non-smoking flight. Smoking is prohibited on the entire aircraft, including the lavatories. Tampering with, disabling, or destroying the lavatory smoke detectors is prohibited by law. If you have any questions about our flight today, please don't hesitate to ask one of our flight attendants.